So exercise 2 is due today. That would be ideal if you could get it in today. That's the genealogy chart. And I'm assigning your first project today, which is a repeating pattern. So that's project 1. So what you want to do is you want to go to click on files, and you want to go download in files the project 1 folder. So you see here on the right side, you'll find the project 1 folder. Hover over that, click on the ... and choose download. Actually, let me make sure I'm in student view, because I guess I forgot to put myself in student view, so I'll be looking at what you're looking at. So you go to files, and then you hover over project 1, and you see the little ... and you click there and click download, and then it should download the folder as a zip file. And then you go to downloads and you find it, unzip it by double clicking it, and there it is, the folder. And it has 2 handouts for today that we'll be looking at. So I'm gonna move this folder to my folder for the class. I'm gonna go new Finder window and go to my where I'm storing all the stuff for this class, Tuesday, Thursday. And I'm just gonna move project 1 in here so we can open it up and look at it. So here are the instructions. We're also going to be looking at a handout called Design, Composition, and Color. This is a 2-week project. So the first week, I would like you to focus on just the design, the form, the shapes, creating shapes in black and white and shades of gray. So then next week we'll focus on color. So what you're gonna be doing for this assignment is you're gonna be creating a design in a 1-inch by 1-inch tile or square, and then you're gonna be duplicating that square out, and you're going to be able to reflect it or rotate it at 90-degree intervals to form a larger pattern where new themes emerge from the elements in the design. So do you notice here larger, like different imagery that has formed in the way that the elements in the 1-inch by 1-inch are coming together and kind of connecting and building? Does anyone notice how that's happening from looking at what's within the 1-inch by 1-inch square and seeing different elements creating a design, and then seeing other formations coming together that were not in the 1-inch by 1-inch design, but are now coming together and emerging in the larger pattern? Can anyone describe what they see here that is coming together, that is brand new, that wasn't in the original 1-inch by 1-inch? I see some maybe comments in chat. What is it?
8-pointed stars.
Stars, yeah. This one definitely is what we call a dominant theme, because it really pops out at you right away. The stars.
Like a checkerboard pattern.
Yeah, the checkerboard's coming together overall too. That's a good observation, because in the 1-inch by 1-inch there, she chose to have, this is a sample from some student work, she chose to have the outline around her background box here, so that built the larger 1-inch by, the larger checkerboard feel to the design. And I'm seeing some new stuff in chat. Let's see. So stars, someone said, kind of looks like tiles for a floor plan. Interesting observation. That's great to think about what this pattern could actually be used for in the real world. That's great to be thinking along those lines. That's awesome. All right. What formations do you see coming together that you don't see in the original 1 inch by 1 inch, but you do see in the pattern, like the star, the 8-point star? Where did that come from in the 1 inch by 1 inch? Is it the top left corner? Is it the bottom right corner? Is it the, where is that coming from? Where would you say, what part of the 1 inch by 1 inch formed this star here?
Bottom right corner.
Bottom right corner, yeah. So within the 1 inch by 1 inch, that element looks very different than how it's coming together in the corners. So that's something that you'll get to see emerge as you piece your tile together in different ways, which is where this project gets very exciting, when you see imagery start to form that maybe you didn't even predict. Some of it you can maybe predict, you can kind of make it go in a certain direction. But others, maybe it will be even a surprise to you as the designer, which is an exciting way to work. So we are going to be getting to do that kind of work. Anything else could you point out? And you guys can use your voices. Let's be brave. Use your voices. I mean, it's fine to use chat, but I like to hear voices. But I see something in chat, so I'm going to go back and read it. So Mav is saying the corners of the tile have formed squares from the circle in the top left corner. The corners of the tile have formed squares from the circle.
The circles that aren't colored in make like squares.
Oh, are you talking about these? Wait, the corners of the tile have formed squares. The corners of the tile, like.
Yeah, that little circle.
Oh, these circles. Squares from the circles in the top left corner. Okay. Square. Oh yeah, I see the square shaped. Yes. Yeah. So that's a formation that happens. What would you call this larger formation? Any creative ideas to
A pinwheel?
Pinwheel, yeah. Fan makes me think of, definitely.
Yeah, like a windmill.
Windmill, yes. Could be a clean energy symbol. What else are you seeing? Anything else? So we see the stars, we see the windmill. Do you see anything larger than that that's coming together?
Yeah, like the little on the tile, it's like those weird peanut almond looking things, and then with the whole pattern they like connect and form like a diamond, loose diamond sort of.
Yeah, that's what I'm seeing. Definitely big diamonds and different versions of the diamond, like this one with the different centerpiece inside, like a more round diamond around the star, and a more like square straight line diamond around the windmill. Definitely, I see diamonds. You can also kind of look at it like crisscrosses or streamers, X's forming. Lots of different ways to look at it. Yeah, X's and O's. Yeah. Yeah, so this is I would say this is just a cross section from the finished pattern, and it is definitely successful for this project, for the challenge I'd like you to take on for this project, because of the way that it has developed what we call in the design world themes, and not just one theme, but we've got several different themes where the imagery, the elements that are in the 1 inch by 1 inch tile that are repeated are building into these larger themes, different imagery that's emerging that wasn't in the original 1 inch by 1 inch. That would be a good test to know that you're really doing well at this particular project, and doing well in design, in using great design strategies. If your 1" by 1" tile builds into different themes, at least 2, maybe even, like, the more the merrier. 2 or 3 is great. Different new imagery that comes together that makes different formations. So that's what we're going to be starting with this week, and the goal is to repeat the boxes so that in the end you have a block of that's 7 by 9. So 7 boxes going one way, 9 boxes going the other way. It can be portrait or landscape. And then this week let's start with a black and white version, and that can include shades of gray. Next week we'll get into color, and I have a whole lesson all about color planned for you for next week. So if you can hold back on coloring this week, choose shades of gray, black, and white. And I'm going to also be talking about the other handout to help us to learn the strategies of making a great composition and get on the same page as far as concepts and terminology goes. So that's what this other handout is that you'll find on Canvas, the design, composition, and color. I'm going to stop short before we get to color and save color for next week. I'm also going to be opening up some examples of some student work here. Some more examples to look at. Examples. Okay, so here's another example. I'm gonna let that open back here, and let's take a look at this presentation here on design and composition. So what is composition? Composition is the arrangement of elements and shapes in space. And space is defined as the emptiness or area between, around, above, or within objects. Shapes and forms are defined by the space around and within them. So space is everything in a composition, every part of a composition. And that space is then broken down into positive space and negative space. Positive space is a representation of the occupied space, while negative space is a representation of the unoccupied space. So if you're doing a still life, for example, the occupied space would be like what? A vase, right? A pot of flowers or whatever. Or if you're doing a portrait of someone, the occupied space is the person in the portrait. The negative space is the background area, right? The area that's just, just background. What about when working with abstract imagery? In the case of this assignment, we may be working with abstract imagery with shapes. So you'll be developing creating shapes and arranging them on a background. Within your 1" by 1", you're going to start with a background shape, which is your negative space, and then you're going to be adding shapes on top of that, which is your positive space, and designing those shapes, altering those shapes with tools. One kind of mistake that new designers make is to put more attention onto the positive space shapes and positive space elements than the negative space. A seasoned, experienced designer knows that it's as important to put your attention and your focus on the shapes that are developing within the background, within the negative space, as much as the positive space, and to be able to look at the shapes forming in negative space as if they are positive space. So you're constantly looking back and forth at both of those, areas making sure that there is good balance so that in the end your work is going to be much more interesting to look at and more aesthetically pleasing and not have any sort of feeling of awkwardness. Everything is going to be look like it's flowing smoothly. We also refer to positive space as elements. They are the objects that we're working with on top of the background, which is the negative space. All right, so there are two types of compositions. One is formal, based on a mathematical equation, and the other is informal, based on your eye. It's subjective. There are infinitely more choices. So with the formal one, you're starting out with like a very mathematical plan that you're going to go by. Like you might say, I want to make a composition that's going to be divided up equally into this many boxes, and then I'm going to have circles that all have a diameter of this length that are going to be spaced equidistant from one another. So you can have like a formal setup like that when you create, or you can just kind of use the informal method where you're just creating shapes and laying them out and doing designs, drawings, and laying them out and looking at the positive space and looking at the formations that you see appearing in the negative space and using your own subjective judgment to make choices. So just like it says, there are infinitely more choices when you work informally as opposed to when you start out with a mathematical formula that you're going by, that you're going to commit to. For this assignment, what do you think, which composition do you think we're going to be working with or creating? A formal based composition or informal? Or could it be a combination of both?
Both.
Both, yes. I agree. And why would you say both, do you think?
So it's 9 by 7, which is the mathematical aspect of it. You need a certain amount of squares. But the informal aspect is using your creative freedom, your eye, to figure out what looks good as far as composition.
Yes, exactly. And definitely there are formal criteria based on the criteria of the assignment that we need to stay within to keep the to follow the structure of what we're going to end up with, which is a 7 by 9 block of boxes, and the boxes all have to be rotated in increments of 90. So you can't have any boxes like just haphazardly rotated like they're scattered cards. They have to all fit together, and I'm going to be showing you how to do this without having any gaps between your boxes as well. And we're starting with a 1 inch by 1 inch. So those are all very formal criteria. And you're right, what's informal are the choices that you might make within the 1 inch by 1 inch. You can be as informal as you'd like, all like within the 1 inch by 1 inch. If you want to go formal and come up with your own formal method of design within your 1 inch by 1 inch, that's your choice. That's up to you. And then the way you flip the boxes around to create new imagery could also in some ways be informal. You will have some choice in that, although like I said, you can't just have the boxes be like diagonally turned like they're diamonds. They have to be boxes, squares that are placed so that they all snap together without any gaps and in the end create a 7 by 9 block. So yes, I would say this can definitely be a combination of both formal and informal. this next page, starting with basic criteria, this is a great strategy page on how to create a composition that is really engaging to your viewer, and it also has some key points in how you would make a pattern design. How within your 1" by 1" you can make a very strategic design that will build into more interesting themes as you piece the boxes together. So it's important to understand the organizing principles and how our eyes as viewers group elements together as themes. So when there are 5 or more, that's when our eyes naturally start grouping elements together into themes. So as you are developing imagery, you want to be your goal is to start developing that imagery within your 1" by 1" box into themes that repeat and that vary. Themes should be repeated and varied. A good composition may have many themes, but there should be one dominant one. So I would say in a pattern, the dominant one is the one that really stands out the most, that you see first. And these are great principles for any design, whether it's a pattern, whether it's a t-shirt design, or a design for an advertisement, or book cover, or magazine spread layout. These are great principles to make any design more engaging, to keep your viewers' eyes really focused on every part of the design for longer periods of time. So it's also important to have contrast in your works. Obviously, you don't want everything to look all one shade of gray. So you want certain elements to pop out and stand out over others. So contrast is anytime 2 or more qualities are opposites. And you can use those opposites to your benefit to make your work really pop and make certain elements stand out over others. Dark versus light is an example. Straight versus crooked. Big versus small. If there's too much, though, the viewer gets confused. So there's always a balance. In this example, what would you say are characteristics that contrast one another?
The filled versus the stroke shapes.
Oh yes, that's a great observation. Filled shapes versus the stroked or outlined shapes. Definitely, that's a great one to point out. Any others you notice that are opposites of each other?
The black and white stripes going through the shapes in the middle of the pattern.
Black and white stripes going through in like here. Oh the some are black, some are white.
Or black stripe.
Yeah, definitely there. Yeah, and the fact that everything is black and white are opposites too. What about anything relating to the shape, the form of? You see straight lines, yes, straight lines and corners, and you see smooth curves. You see curves meeting straight lines, and just completely smooth shapes like circles, and then hard edge shapes like the stars. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of contrast going on. You don't have to have like I said, you don't have to choose just black and white. You could have shades of gray, but you do want to have a certain level of contrast so it doesn't all look the same, obviously. And some artists who called themselves minimalists, they got away with that. But for design work, I don't think that the minimalist art is going to fly. So focal point is really important to think about what that is and how to use that. What is focal point? Well, it says here focal point is the center of interest in a composition. And ironically, we want to actually avoid placement of the focal point in the center because it's still there. And that's where we get the term the dead center. So let's think about that for a moment. Why wouldn't we want the most interesting part of our composition to be smack dab in the middle? Does anyone have any ideas on how to elaborate on that? Reasons for why that wouldn't be a good idea to put the most interesting part of the composition right in the middle?
Oh, because if it was in the center, it would be boring.
Yeah. And why do you think it would be boring? Any ideas?
I don't know. Doesn't make you like look around the rest of the image. You just see the strongest part of it, and then kind of it's like, okay, that's it.
Exactly. You know? Exactly. Well said. Yeah. Because of the way that as viewers, the way that we perceive, the way that we view a composition, our eye naturally wants to just go to the center and stop. And you put the most interesting part in the center, exactly, the viewer is not going to see anything else in the composition but what's in the middle. Their eye goes directly there, stops there, and they're not going to pay attention to anything else in the composition, and they're just going to walk away. They've seen it all. They've seen the most interesting part. It's like when all the spoilers are cut together in a 2-minute trailer. A viewer will walk away thinking, well, why should I spend 2 hours watching the movie? I know everything that's going to happen in this movie. It's the same thing with visual art, with compositional still art. And your goal as a designer and as an artist is to get the viewer to spend as much time with the work. And doing graphic design work is even more essential, that you keep the viewer's attention and you entice them to actually read text on a page. If you put the picture, the most interesting part, right in the middle, do you think they're going to ever get around to reading the text on the page? Probably not. They're just going to see that and be like, oh, that's it, and then walk away. So we want to kind of entice them and really lure them into to want to look at every part of the composition. And part of, a big strategy in doing that is to place the focal point, the most interesting imagery, off center. And then, if we're placing the most interesting imagery off center, what do you think would be good to put in the center? This is an example, and the 1" by 1" box is enlarged up here, up above. You don't have to do that, but it's kind of nice to see it up here enlarged. So here's the 1" by 1" enlarged. Would you guys be able to point out what you think is the focal point in this design? You guys kind of describe what you think might be the focal point.
From first observation, I see like a big, it looks like an A.
Yeah, an A.
Yeah.
Like the top of the A is, I would call that the focal point, and that's nicely placed off center. What do you think it would be good to have in the center if the focal point can't be in the center? What type of elements do you think should be in the center? Here's a hint. It's the next topic here. Elements that create movement that's what should be in the center. And remember last week I said, what else besides the focal point do you think should not be in the center? I mentioned it last week. Anyone remember? No, it's all hazy now. I said, do you ever leave the center empty? Is that a good idea?
No.
No, yeah. So 2 things you want to avoid having in the center: the focal point and empty space. And what you do want to have in the center are elements that create movement, like lines, swishes, brush strokes. It could be elements that create some kind of trail that form a line or a curve that allow your viewer's eye to follow and pull your viewer's eye in a certain direction. You want to pull your viewer's eye towards the focal point and then, and then back around and then back to the focal point, away from the focal point, to the focal point, so that you're drawing your viewer's eye over every part of the composition. So they spend the most time possible looking.
They're like roads of interest.
Yes. So by the direction of the shapes and the space between them, movement is created. An effective way to keep a viewer focused on the focal point is through movement. And I might add, it is also an effective way to keep the viewer looking at every part of the composition and spending the most time with it. In a gallery show, the art that's the most successful art in a gallery show, the viewers will be spending the most time standing in front of it. And also, so just to go back to this pattern here, if he had the most important, like the most interesting part right in the middle, like if I go and I make a box and I put, something that's interesting, let's see, just smack dab in the middle, I'm just going to say that this dot is going to be interesting. And then I go and repeat this box, and it won't even matter how many times I rotate it. It's going to end up, what is it going to end up with? You're just going to end up with the same thing all over. And it's going to be a repeating pattern, but it's going to be not as interesting a repeating pattern as it could be. There's nothing wrong with polka dots, of course. But, you're not going to have any different imagery than what's within the 1 inch by 1 inch if you have a design where the most interesting thing is in the middle and there's nothing really around the corners or the edges or off center. So think about that, and how when you do follow these strategies and you have your most interesting parts or part, you can have more than one kind of focal point for this. You just want to make sure it's off center, and you want to make sure that you have elements that create movement in the middle. And then that is a great strategy to building a composition that has many themes to look at, a lot of new imagery that's developed, just like this one here that did a really great job of building these larger themes. Can you name any themes that are coming together that stand out in this one? We've got, some people see light bulbs. I see light bulbs here coming together. People see these diamonds. Yeah, that's like diamonds, twinkly stars. Some people see these larger circular formations. Like smaller circles, larger
there's
circles.
There's like kind of like an eye shape.
Ooh, yeah, like eyeball, like this?
No, like
like the
like
side.
The eye of Sauron.
Oh, I see, like diagonal.
Yeah.
Yep, for sure.
Maybe diamonds and spades.
Say that again. Oh,
Diamonds and spades. Maybe.
Oh yeah, I see this, like these bigger, yeah, the diamonds on the cards, the spades. And then these bigger diamond formations and how it's kind of all interwoven is really cool. Some people see flower shapes and butterfly shapes. So you could just spend hours just looking at this, finding all these different themes that are emerging and growing out of this. And that's because of how successful the design was within the 1 inch by 1 inch, how it lent itself to building all of these really interesting larger themes. Like this circular area, this one. It's really cool to look at. So that's the strategy. Let me see. Let me go on with this one. So I was talking about focusing on the positive space as much as, or focusing on the negative space as much as you focus on the positive space. And sorry, one of my son's toys is like, it's come to life back there. I don't know where it is, otherwise I would turn it off. Anyway, balance is how you integrate your elements so that the composition is aesthetically pleasing. And part of making that work is in putting as much attention on the negative space as the positive space. And then that's how you create good balance. There are two types of balance, symmetrical and asymmetrical. Symmetrical where one element mirrors the other, asymmetrical where the elements do not mirror each other. In this example here, which if I drew the line of symmetry down the middle horizontally, or down the, vertically, if I divided this, each of these in half vertically, which one would you say is symmetric? The one on the left or the one on the right?
Left.
Yeah, so this is, the elements are mirroring each other. If I drew down the line down the other way, a horizontal, do you see any, which one is symmetric, or which one is asymmetric, or I think
on the right.
I'm trying to give you a trick question. It's actually, if you drew the line the other way, neither of them would be symmetric. They would both be asymmetric, right? But that was a trick question. This one is clearly the symmetric one, and this one is the asymmetric. Finally, I'm glad you guys, so you were thinking about looking at this pattern as being looking like it could be a pattern for a floor. Who said that? A kitchen floor. That was a good observation. When you're coming up with design work for a client in the real world, for a purpose to be used in the real world, you always should be thinking about the audience that it's going to appeal to, and the meaning or feeling that the piece should be conveying. You should have a purpose in cases when you're doing work for the real world. And for this class, you can kind of work in an experimental way and allow your imagery to just unfold and see where it goes. It'll kind of just, not necessarily having a certain purpose or meaning from the beginning. But for real world work, this is the takeaway message. A composition should never contradict the meaning of the piece. The organization, movement, and balance should all support the idea, feeling, or concept you're trying to convey. So you may not start out for this assignment with a concept or meaning or feeling that you're trying to convey. You may just just work in an experimental way, and then in the end you end up with something that could work for a kitchen floor, or could work for the wallpaper of someone's room. But in the real world, you may have a client who commissions you to do a project for a purpose. Like if you had if there was a client who wanted to hire you to create a a pattern for drapes for their meditation room, what colors or forms would you envision that you might create? How might you describe the colors or the forms, the shapes that you would use for a meditation room, for example? Can anyone share any ideas?
Usually when you're meditating, the goal is to kind of clear your mind, so I wouldn't do something very chaotic that's distracting.
Exactly.
Maybe something, what's the word? I forgot the word, but when all the colors are like the same, on the same side of the color wheel.
Oh, like a monochromatic.
Yeah, I would
color
like
scheme.
that kind of color scheme as well.
Yes, those are great ideas. Anyone else have anything else to add?
Oh, maybe like that one pattern we saw, the one with the flowing pathways, nice curves, no jagged ends, maybe, but or less so of jagged endings, like corners, more curves.
Smooth curves. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm picturing too. So
soft hues of colors. Nothing
soft.
too bright.
Right, exactly. And every time I ask people for ideas based on that example, everyone usually comes up with this very similar ideas. So it's so fascinating how universal form and color is in conveying feeling. I mean, you can come up with, like in art classes, I've done this where you have certain words where certain meanings are attached to them, like love or anger or like mechanical. Or we put words up around the room, and then we create imagery for each of those words, and it's amazing to see so much similarity across the board in the imagery, and people come from all different cultures and all different backgrounds, but there's always this level of universality in form and color that always shines through, that always comes through. So there's always that universality that we have that connects us as humans. But there is still meaning attached to symbols and imagery and colors that isn't universal, that's more cultural in context. So whenever we're thinking about a project for a certain group of people, a certain audience, we do want to pay attention to what imagery and color is going to mean to that specific target audience and appeal to that audience, and also appeal to the company and the client and the audience. And in that way, you don't want to have contradictions of your imagery with your idea or feeling or concept that needs to be conveyed based on the purpose of the project. But that's for the real world. For this assignment, you can be free and let things kind of happen naturally, and then think about what purpose this pattern could be used for. Or if you want to go out and actually use this pattern for the real world, you might want to go visit a website called spoonflower.com. One of my students actually introduced me to it. After you create your pattern, you could visit Spoonflower and you could actually upload a square section of your pattern if you export it as like a PNG or a TIFF file. You could actually click upload your design and choose the file, and you can choose choose fabric or wallpaper of any kind and have it printed and make clothing, or have your room wallpapered with that design. And then in that case, you will set out with a purpose of your own for your pattern to really convey the feeling that you're going for that space or for that article of clothing. So you may want to check out spoonflower.com. That's not a part of the assignment, but it's a fun place to go also to see other patterns that are up. People, when you upload your design, people could potentially purchase your pattern, and you can make a little bit of money when people actually pay to have your design printed. But there are lots of, you can look at lots of the designs that are up already of different patterns. You can browse here to get ideas, get inspired without copying anyone's design. But if you want to get inspired by patterns, you can visit spoonflower.com. And that is also, let me see, if you go to assignments on in your Canvas course and you click on project 1, you'll see some resources, and the spoonflower.com website is there. At the top are just the handouts for this week, the instructions and the design, composition, color handout. And next week we'll get into color, and these are all the color handouts that I'll be going over for next week, and videos that I'll talk about for next week if you want to watch them ahead of time to learn about the printing industry and learn about RGB versus CMYK. If you have extra time, you're welcome to look ahead at these videos. It'll get you ready for what we're going to cover next week. But I wouldn't spend time on watching these videos until you're done with your black and white version of your pattern. Okay, so let's see. Do you guys want to take a break? Or let's take a break in a little while. I'm going to just go ahead and get started now. I do have some more examples, but they're all it's funny, all of my examples that are black and white are just black and white, but I do recommend you use shades of gray. This one's kind of interesting because she experimented a lot with the way she flipped her box to create different imagery in this one, and then her color version, which turned out really nice, which is a complementary color scheme, which is our goal for next week. We'll talk all about color schemes next week. But she flipped her box around in her color version in a more symmetric way, so that it's more of a seamless look to the design where these formations are appearing. This reminds me of some kind of animal, like a big cow or something, with eyes and a nose, and then the stars, and then these kind of floral patterns coming together in an interesting way. So lots of interesting themes. Oh, this looks like a different kind of face right here, the eyes and the nose. And then this one over here, she's kind of flip-flopping her box around in different ways to create these other formations, and maybe she likes the zigzag going on, but she's allowing there to be more of a seam, sort of, but because things are repeating, it sort of works. This one works too, but this one's less balanced in that you see kind of more breaks in it, but it still overall came together as an interesting looking pattern. But the same box, different patterns, so it's interesting to see that. And then this one is cool with the different themes that came together on this one.